Family Guy. This show truly holds a special place in my heart. Although initially little more than a cheap imitator of the wildly more successful cartoon The Simpsons, with many of the same character archetypes, it really managed to distinguish itself and forge an identity of its own. Not only was it consistently funny as all sitcoms strive to be, but the characters were charming and the show just had a lot of heart and really knew how to tell genuinely touching and meaningful stories.
You're pregnant with our baby?
It's no secret that modern Family Guy is a train wreck. I mean, just look at season 13, Stewie is, Stewie impregnates himself with Brian's dinner. Wait, what the fuck? Who approved this? Or season 12's Fresh Air, where Peter tries to marry his own son. Okay, genuinely, who wrote and approved this? Are these people okay? Both of these episodes were horrible, because instead of putting in effort and having an actual plot or lesson, they relied purely on shock value and gross-out humour. Episodes like these ones were just trying to be edgy rather than kind-hearted or funny, with none of the heart of the previous seasons. My love for Family Guy primarily comes from the first 3 seasons. You had the charming Griffin family going through issues, both mundane and wacky. You had a group of people here who felt connected, who you actually believed loved one another. And I know a character was more clear than Peter Griffin. Peter was a man who, despite his many flaws, cared deeply for his family. Sure, he wasn't exactly a model father, and he struggled to relate to his kids, but it's clear that he genuinely did love and care for them. See season 1's The Sun Also Draws. It's an episode about how Peter wants to make sure his son grows up to have a better life, and to show him what it's like in the outside world by having him become a member in the Scouts. Chris doesn't really want to become a Scout, and would much rather pursue art, but doesn't really know how to tell that to Peter. The two have a really sweet moment at the end of the episode where they bond over their differing interests. As they hug, Peter looks down at Chris's art, clearly not impressed. It's a fantastic way to show how Peter cares for and is supportive of his son and his interests, even if he doesn't really understand or approve of them. It's also an episode that fleshes out Chris's character a little more, which, yeah, he definitely needed it. Another great example of Peter caring for his family is in another episode from season 1, titled I Never Met the Dead Man, although he does drive his family crazy in it. Peter drives into a satellite dish, getting rid of TV throughout Quahog and blames it on Meg, leading to her getting bullied at school and becoming the town's laughingstock. Peter is shown to be immediately remorseful for what he's done, and it's shown that his sudden change of heart is motivated by his wish to spend time with his family.
Meg, honey, I know what I did was wrong, and I know this isn't the first time I've embarrassed you.
Something that's mentioned at the start of an episode in what is seemingly a throwaway line.
For God's sake, Peter, you've been sitting in front of the TV since you got home from work. Why don't you spend some time with your family?
I will. I'm just going to do it during the commercials. And if that's wrong, well, then maybe I'm missing the point of having commercials.
The early episodes I mentioned have good morals, like I Never Met the Dead Man. It's about how it's good to spend time with your family in any way you can, and you should cherish what time you have with them. And the aforementioned The Sun Also Draws has the message of, whilst not everyone approves of or understands your passion or interests, there are still people who will support you and you should never give up on your dreams. They paint Peter as a lovable character and showcase his growth excellently. But then disaster struck as Family Guy was cancelled after its 3rd season. After its cancellation, the show's creator Seth MacFarlane would move on to another cartoon called American Dad. This show was somewhat different to Family Guy in its tone and writing style, but you could tell that in the early stages they were just trying to recapture the magic of Family Guy. Fortunately for Seth, however, not long after the premiere of American Dad, Family Guy was brought back from cancellation. Unfortunately, however, the writers realised how lucky of a position they were in, being revived after cancellation. And it's been so long away from these characters that they decided not to recapture the spirit of the first 3 seasons, but instead went for a more comedy-driven show. Family Guy was always about the comedy. It's a sitcom after all.
Peter, maybe you shouldn't say anything bad about the network.
Oh, why? What are they going to do? Cut our budget? I want to go get a beer.
But at times it took a backseat to the plots that the characters had to go through. There were, of course, still the occasional cutaway gag here and there, but the show still cared about telling a good story. This was shown in episodes like Season 3's Brian Wallows and Peter Swallows, where Peter had to take care of some baby swallows he found after deciding to grow a beard, but realises that they'd have a better life elsewhere and lets them go. This episode has a powerful message about valuing the time you spend with others and how loving someone can sometimes mean letting them go to live a better life without you. Post-cancellation, Peter, however, couldn't give less of a shit about anyone other than himself. What did they do to these characters? Not only do I now no longer care for a single one of these characters, but I don't think that they even care for one another. Peter probably had it the worst. He's just an unlikable asshole and a complete idiot. He and Lois are constantly cheating on each other, Peter is constantly being a dick to everybody and whines like a baby when things don't go his way. Take season 12's Brian's a Bad Father, for example. In this episode's B-plot, Peter intentionally shoots Quagmire whilst out on a hunting trip. And when Quagmire no longer wants to be friends with Peter, he tries to commit suicide. He then offers Quagmire the opportunity to shoot him back and spends the whole rest of the episode cowering in fear. None of this is helped by his declining vocal direction from season 10 onwards, where he just talks like a baby, intentionally slurring words and making stupid noises. Although I don't think I'm really qualified to be able to talk on how other people speak. It's only gotten worse over the years too, like in season 21's Single White Dad, where Peter and Chris rebuild a stage from f***ing Donkey Kong on top of their house, which leads to Lois getting her foot broken. Peter then has to look after the kids, which is just sad to watch. There's a telling scene where Lois asks Peter, the literal titular family guy, if he'd be excited to watch over his family, to which he bluntly replies,
No, and you know that.
Peter is no longer the loving, if slightly misguided father he was initially intended to be. He's now nothing more than a big, whiny, selfish baby. Sure, he was always a bit childish, but after the show's revival, it's like he was specifically designed to be as insufferable as possible. The other characters are hardly exempt from this, but he's definitely one of the characters who suffered the most from the change in writing styles, and frankly, covering the others would probably require a dedicated video. In conclusion, I can say with confidence that sadly, I no longer care for Peter Griffin. But hey, at least I can play as him in Fortnite.